Welcome back to Screenfish Radio. I am so glad you could join us tonight as we are talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I am always happy when a Marvel movie comes around because it means I get to speak to the Marvel-ettes. And I'm so thrilled to have Miriam Ibrahim and Dina Hamdieh back. Welcome to you both. I'm so glad you could be here.
Thanks for having us again.
Yep. Always excited to bring the Marvel-ettes gang back together.
I really do look forward to it. I hope that you two don't get bored of this because you're my go-to now. This is great. I love it. I love it.
You'll get my bill.
Oh man. Wait, you got Dina, you've never actually submitted a receipt, so we've done this about 10 times now.
Never too late to start. Oh no, it's one of those on the tab. Like I open the tab for you. You'll get my bill.
So Screenfish got to pay off its tab. That's fair.
Got to close it out.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 follows Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, as he is still reeling from the loss of Gamora, and he must rally his team to defend the universe and protect one of their own. If the mission is not completely successful, it could possibly lead to the end of the Guardians as we know them. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers, but I am dying to hear from you both what you thought of Volume 3. Who's taking us home first?
Sure, I'll jump in. You know what? I really loved it. I thought it was really good. It's very James Gunn, which is very enjoyable. It strikes such a good balance of like lighthearted, serious subject matter. And okay, so super random way to gauge a movie, but Marvel movies are long. And movie theater seats are not always comfortable. And so sometimes I start to like shuffle in my seat. Like I'm just not comfy. I've lost a little bit of my focus because my bum is uncomfortable. And I'm like, should I sit on my coat? Let's shift to the other side. I did not experience that once in this film because it really was quite riveting. Like I was happy to stay focused. Like I just really enjoyed it. It was fun.
So your high critique is that your bum didn't go numb. Oh,
yes.
You know it's late.
It's when I'm just saying, like this is a pretty regular phenomenon. It's an unusual thing for it to not matter. That's all.
We're learning a lot about Mira tonight. This is a frequent occurrence.
Loves comfort.
Loves uncomfortable movie seats is a problem.
And likes time to fly by and not feel it. I totally, Mira, I 100% agree with you. I love this movie. I will say I'm not usually this positive about these movies, Steve, so I thought maybe you'd enjoy this, but because usually I have a lot to say, right? I think the last movie, I liked Ant-Man, but I have not been the most positive with the previous few. And I cried in this one, so I was bawling. And
was it because your bum was numb?
It was.
Can I ask that? I'm not sure if I can.
Well, I'm like, well, the VIP seats are great, but still, no, it was great. It was from the moment that opening scene with Rock, I just couldn't. I have this thing about animals, and something hit me, and so I cried. And the way that it was shot, and the hand going in like this to kind of reach, I just couldn't. There was just a lot in it. The movie was fantastic. It was a joy. It was a ride. It was a perfect kind of tie to the Guardians and introducing kind of the new wave of where they go next. And they introduced new characters that you kind of liked and didn't understand. And you're like, I'm going to get to know you later. So that's fine. I'll put you on pause. But yeah, so I loved it. I can't say enough about this movie. I think it's kind of highly rated, is it not, Steve? We kind of bring this up in these things. Tell me when you're like, Ant-Man was like 30%. And I'm like, I love this movie.
Well, you know what's interesting about this one, and this surprised me. I think it didn't surprise me that the fan response is about 92%. The critics are at 60. I think it's about 60%.
Really?
Yeah, and I've read articles saying that this is proof that the MCU is dead. and it's like, really,
I
this
thought the
is
opposite with this movie, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
thought they
I
did
agree.
something right here. I was so disappointed in the previous ones that they rated maybe a bit higher. This one was a perfect story. It was Rocket was the protagonist of the movie. It was sort of this like culmination. I loved, this whole aspect of trauma and perfection at the same time. So we can talk about that later. But yeah, I love the way the story was written. I love the way it was told. I love the flashbacks. You connected, you understood, and you sort of knew Rocket had something lingering from previous movies, and it just tied everything together. And everything makes sense when it comes to him and the way he reacts to affection and the way so I love that they tied him in. I think so. James Gunn, I don't know if you saw this, but James Gunn had come out and said the first Guardians movie was about like the mom, right, the mother, and then the second one was about the dad, and then this
Yeah.
one was about self. And I
Hmm.
found that
Oh,
interesting because it's not just about self for Peter Quill, but it's about just self. All of them,
yeah.
all of them at the end kind of found their purpose or their selves, right? Like even Mantis is like, I'm going off, I'm doing my thing. I've never had this before, and it's sort of identifying in yourself. So I just love that concept of kind of finding yourself, even if it's leaving those you love, or maybe a new journey starts for you. Um, but yeah, so I loved it. I can't say anything negative about
Yeah.
this movie.
Self is an interesting position because you talked about like trauma and some of those pieces. I'd also add blame. Like I think the movie
Yeah.
really tackles like blame in all sorts of places and directions too. Um, I don't know if I 100% buy self. Maybe like
This is what he
self,
said, but I mean,
yeah,
you could take
maybe
it
like
whatever way.
self actualization because like to me it really came down to family, like that confidence and that connection to family that allows. I thought of it almost like secure attachment, right? Like if you raise a child with the right like enough love and they are secure in knowing that they are loved and that you are there to guide and protect them, then they explore the world on their own without fear, right? But when you've got avoidant attachment or like when there's a break in that building of I am safe and you are safe when you are in my sphere, like so you and I will be your anchor, you can always kind of anchor back to me, then you have the confidence to explore, to grow, to do without feeling like you have to be like codependent or connected or attached. So I like that's maybe how I would position it. Maybe the self, but the self in the sense of building from the security of the family unit that was built. And I think nowhere random giant godhead skull thing that it was
Yes, it's
re-
awesome.
right represented that like that
Yeah.
became the base from which they connected as a family. They ran through their pieces on blame, right? Like when Rocket was first taken and Peter was like, if I hadn't been drunk, like there anyways, I think there's a lot to play around with blame and family and like an anchor to give you the freedom to go out.
See, I would go back. I actually like that description of self, and personally, the reason is that every character in this film finds their value of themselves.
So yeah.
Yes, the family aspect is key. I agree. It's who they are now. They are a family. But Rocket becomes at peace with himself.
Mm.
Um, Peter becomes at peace with himself. Drax, they say to him, I don't even know what you're doing here. And then at the end, they're like, I know who you are now. So I could see that. Um, I honestly, going back to the last time we talked and we talked about superhero fatigue and all this stuff, like, the cure of superhero fatigue, make a good friggin' movie. And this film invested in its characters. And look,
Yeah.
I liked Ant-Man. I'm one of the few defenders. It's not a great movie. I know it's not a great movie, but I had fun watching it. The third one,
Mm.
right? But it doesn't invest in its characters. The whole Ant-Man franchise, none of them ever did. The
Yeah.
Spider-Man one did. The two Black Panthers movie have. This one has. Even the three Iron Man movies do, sometimes to lesser success. Even though by the end, like they absolutely invested in Iron Man character, but his
Mm.
films lesser degree in some ways. you had somebody that cared about their characters, was interested in seeing them grow, and I think that's what it takes. Like, I know you can't. I know every franchise is different. Thor is another franchise that, as much as Thor is Thor, doesn't care about Thor. Like, there, I love Chris Hemsworth. I think he's hilarious, but I can't tell you any of the films that give you any real character growth. Maybe the last one, but
What
I
are you
think
talking about? He was like, he wears a fat suit in Endgame. What more do you want for growth? He
okay.
grew and
I
he
think
slimmed
he
down.
And he's fixed in 5 seconds in the
And he's
last movie.
I think if you look at him from the first movie, though, and very self-centered, and I think he actually grows a lot in the first couple of films
The
as it
first one,
connects into,
maybe.
yeah,
First
yeah,
one, maybe. The second one was what?
No,
It
the
was like
second one though is not the best. Like the second one's forgotten about. I think the third one is good because he finds his sense of humor and he becomes this kind of
yeah.
personality because of his hair. And then I think, you know how I feel about Love and Thunder. Regardless of that, I think I agree with Miriam. I've seen him grow and now he has the child he's raising and whatever, but
Mhm.
it's not, you're right though. I don't think they've invested the same way.
that's all I'm
And
saying.
it's the story coming full circle. Like I think, Miriam, what you had said about like family and rebuilding, the number one thing I took from this is with Nowhere, they had to rebuild a home.
Mm.
Nowhere was technically, destroyed or whatever, and they had to build
Mhm.
it and they had to make it a home for them, right? And then in their
Mhm.
Christmas
Yeah.
special, you kind of saw how they did that. And then you go to Peter's story, and I found it extremely interesting that he's like, "Did you go visit your grandfather?" And he's like, "No, he left me." And his perception of what happened as a
Yeah.
young kid wasn't accurate. And so
Mm.
even though you think, how your family was laid out, your perception of it traumatizes you, even though if it's not the truth. Like he never left him or whatever his perception was in that hospital room with his mom is actually the opposite. And so I think it's just your perception of it as a child or how you grow up. So I just think the story and how they tied it all together, it makes you invested. So I
Mm.
agreed. Some of the other characters it's not as much. But yeah, it was a roller coaster ride. I have not cried this much in a movie, and it was mostly
Yeah.
because of the rocket situation. Um, but even leaving family, Marianne, like you talked about family and like building that family and security blanket, but being comfortable leaving it
Mm.
when it's because it's your next thing
Yep.
that you're gonna go do. I don't think Mantis
Yeah.
wanted to leave. Obviously, Peter wouldn't want to leave, putting somebody else at the helm and leading the pack, with Rocket.
Mm.
You don't want to leave your security blanket. Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
because there's
That's
a
what
greater thing on the other side.
that's why I would say it's about self. And I don't mean
Mm.
selfishness,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they became, as much as they're still a family, they became individuals.
Mhm.
And in a healthy way. They didn't force a single, not one romance. They didn't force
Yeah.
any of it. I'm like, I
Thank you. Yes.
they don't do that. Marvel didn't
Yeah.
take the easy way out.
Yeah.
I was really impressed.
Yeah.
It's
It was
such a
good.
small thing, but it was so big.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think, I mean, again, to me, like, so I'm fully aligned with both of you. And yes, so much growth of the individuals. But I think again, I'm gonna hold firm to my family piece because at the very end, when we finally hear Groot say something other than "I am Groot," and thanks to somebody else's internet searching, so not my own revelation, but the thinking behind that or the intention there is not that like Groot suddenly starts saying other things. It's that now we're in his inner circle
True.
and we can actually hear and understand what he's saying. Like that again, the self that allows, it's like a symbiosis between the individual and the family, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I thought I took it completely. Well, I took it a little bit like now we as the audience can understand Groot.
Yeah.
That's what she's
Yeah.
saying.
Is that what you're saying? Okay,
Yeah.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that part I
Yeah.
loved because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we took this ride with you for so long. Yeah, I
That we're in
totally
the
agree with
family
that.
now and we can
Yep,
understand you. Yeah.
totally agree
Yep.
with that. It was
Yeah.
actually, I think they did a lot of. I don't know how you felt about the F-bomb being dropped for the first time ever in a Marvel movie. I mean, I was going to bring this up. well, I think they only had, what is it for Steve, you're more of a buff than me about this, but what is it for PG-13 and the number of, so I don't know if this
Yeah,
is
I'm
the
sorry.
case, but
Am I
apparently
a
you can
buff
only,
on how many F-bombs
no,
can be
the
dropped?
ratings of movies. You're the movie buff.
What determines a rating?
If you do a rating of, can you use like specific language, a certain number of, I don't know
Is
how it differs in the
Deadpool not
US
a
and Canada.
Marvel film?
It is. It's rated R. No, I know what
But
you're asking.
it's rated R. I'm talking about PG. Is it PG-13?
It is.
But they're not supposed to drop. I think it's like you only get one. Do you only get one F-bomb
Okay.
or only? I
There
don't know
is
how it works.
officially there's no rule. That's the reality. Everybody thinks there's actual rules. Officially, there are none. It really comes down to the comfort level of the MPAA. But the MPAA will allow one F-bomb in a PG-13 film as long as it's not used in a sexual manner.
Okay.
Oh,
Interesting.
So,
And that's exactly what happened here. It was in the car. Okay. That makes sense.
Huh.
I thought it was interesting because I hadn't seen it. Other than that, which is rated R, and that's its own kind of outside of the world of.
It's intentional. It's an intentional driver in Deadpool, right? Like the dialogue wouldn't be without it.
I just loved it. I thought it was so well done. I was like, yes, this is amazing. And it was so subtle and it wasn't needed. It was just kind of a throwaway. But again, like this concept of I don't know how to drive. I love that part. It makes so much sense. You're like, this guy he's in space. Yes, he's from Earth, and he's like driving. Nebula's like, well, you drive. I'm like, well, do you know how to drive Nebula? Like, I don't know this. It's the little things that you're. I don't know. I just thought that was really lovely. I really liked that moment.
What I liked about the F-bomb, I will say, is that it's strange. It's almost strange how they did it. Like like I like that you say it was like completely unnecessary, because a lot of times they'll choose their spot. They'll like sort of choose their spot and say like, I want to hit the most emphasis with it here, and I'm going to make a big deal of using it in this space. But it was such an odd way to include it. Like it's like, it was casual.
Yeah.
And it was so so random that it almost in some ways was like worked better, because it wasn't like I would have expected it, in the grand, as he's standing in the grand throne room with the high evolutionary, and he's gonna, this is when I'm gonna make my stand. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he says it, and you're like, wait, that's not normal.
But it also wasn't jarring, like to your point, right?
No,
it was so casual that it's almost easy to miss. Like it just was such an everyday kind of thing. Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought that was funny. I had to bring that up because it's like,
yay!
Yeah.
I thought.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, in answer to your comment about isn't Deadpool Marvel, I think I know what you're asking, and the truth is, it wasn't Disney. It was Fox. It was intentionally
R-rated. That's right.
Yes.
But this is, remember, they bought Fox after the first two movies, so they're just bringing him into the MCU.
Yeah.
So the point of this being the first F-bomb isn't that, Deadpool was never part of the MCU. He is now.
Yes.
But
it's
Marvel, Disney has never dropped one in a Marvel film.
Yeah. That's fair. I was going to talk about like parts that we found like really funny in the movie. So you were talking about kind of the F-bomb drop was funny. And of course now it's fallen out of my head. The part I thought was really funny is, and again, just a subtle, like not a big thing, is when they're on this planet with the high evolutionary, and they meet that poor sheep family or ram family. And Peter's idea is, you can't understand me because we speak separate languages. I'm just going to talk louder and slower, and then you will magically I just found that hilarious. Like it was such a good, on point piece of like comedic presentation. Yeah.
When I came out of the theater, we were talking. A couple of us were talking about the film because it's so dark. We were talking about how genuinely funny it was. I was like, well, of course it had to be funny, because if it wasn't, you would know what to do with this, because it was also one of the more intense Marvel films that we've seen. Like, they did not hold back.
Yeah.
So it had better be funny along the way. Otherwise,
Yeah, you
otherwise,
made this argument before with the Thor one because I had
yeah.
come to you saying too funny. I didn't feel the same way about the Thor one that I did with this one, and I'll tell you why. The connection with this one was just the strikes at you, where it's the first of all, I think the way it was shot was like beautiful in terms of how they brought it in, and the hand kind of reaching, and as a if you have an animal, you never go to them this way. You always have to kind of because it's
Yeah.
threatening, and then like what Rocket had to go through. Like we were invested in previous films, and so I emotionally don't get this. I just knew it hit me, and I think they did a better job than Thor. Thor was just silly the entire time, and I didn't see. I mean, the only emotional part about the cancer, it didn't hit me as much because it was kind of covered so much by the humor. This was a combination of both. I literally was crying, and the next scene laughing immediately because it cut through to the next funny thing, and I was like, no, because it was I think the one with the dodge where he hit the Draxx hit with the ball, and I died. I was like crying like tears, and then laughing right away. Like I was like, oh my god, this poor kid. But yeah, I thought they did a great job. I can't say enough about this. I'm sad. I want to see more of. I hope James Gunn does more of the Guardians. I don't think he will.
He's done. He's too
I know.
busy.
I'm sad because this was just a ride that I couldn't. But just to come from like, I think the part about the people who dance and people who don't dance, I wanted to also bring up because I like that piece. Where Draxx is dancing at the end, and I think it's this concept, and I don't know, Steve, if you want to get into kind of the concept of perfection and the appearance of being perfect, or people who dance are this, and this reception of, and then at the end you realizing that it's okay to dance because you're kind of you're being seen in a different way now. People are seeing that Draxx can understand this language, and he's actually pretty smart, and he has strengths that others in the group don't have. And so yeah, I really like the people who dance and people who don't dance, and I just kind of like love that concept. Anyway, I don't know what you thought about it, but that really hit me, I think, a little bit.
I love the celebration that is experienced at the end, and it feels like a natural one. The dancing is part of it. Again, like that confidence to do that sort of thing. But I feel like we've seen celebrations at the end of movies that happen all the time. But I think of like Return of the Jedi, or after they've blown up the Death Star and everybody's like doing but it movies like that feel so forced. This one just sort of felt like a natural outpouring of character growth for me. And the song choice is beautiful. It's beautiful.
But the soundtrack is just, you know what it is, I think, and it's not, it's the, I know that like James Gunn had said, oh, I play the music on set to get the actors kind of invested in the music and kind of feel it a little bit. But yeah, that last scene where it's like, oh, Draxx, you're not meant to be a destroyer. You're meant to be a father. Like
that broke me. That was when it broke me. There were a couple times I was like, I'm more choked up than I am in the average. Like Marvel films don't really get to me very often. There's on occasion, but that's where I broke. That's where I broke.
Everything with the animals. So every time that it was Rocket and Lila and Floor and Teeth. Those were very like emotional, powerful, but really tough scenes.
I think it is tough because they thought they were being made to be perfect. I'm gonna start crying again. That they were going to be good enough to go to Counter Earth.
Yeah.
And that, like, being naive to think that, and then when Rocket finds out that that's not the case and has to run back and like tell them, like that was just sad after everything they'd gone through to make these perfect things that are gonna be worthy of Counter Earth, which then get blown up anyway because I can start over and build something else that's perfectly new.
I loved what you were saying there, Dina, because the idea of perfection in this film is wild to me. Like this, in some ways, it's the same conversation we saw in the last Marvel film. It's not a different conversation we heard from Kang, but it's so much more fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was just a key point. But I mean, I loved a whole bunch of stuff in this movie. I think the relationship between Peter and Gamora and that difference there, I think that was important to see that they didn't just get back together at the end of the movie. I like that. I like that, you know what? She's different. She may fall in love eventually again, but that dynamic of him being heartbroken and, oh, what if? And, oh, she used to be in love with me. And then that he looks over at Nebula because she's like, you should be with somebody like her. And he looks over at Nebula and talk about perfection again, tying it all back. He says, oh, I never noticed how, dark your eyes were. And she'd mentioned Thanos and mentioned that this is how Thanos made me. And these are the what. And he said, oh, you picked a perfect set or a good set.
Yeah.
It's like,
but he's trying to like make light of torture. She's like, this is how he tortured me. And he's like, oh,
I know, but even then, maybe he was being sincere that they look nice. But even with you trying, I guess somebody's trying to make you perfect because Thanos was torturing her. Even with that on the other side, some beauty comes out of it, right? And it's not because Rocket, like he was tortured and I guess thought he was being made perfect. But even though perfection doesn't exist, still beauty at the end of it and seeing something. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but seeing something, there anyway, beyond the torture, there's always something on the other side. That's kind of what I took from it with the Nebula piece, but it could be just me.
That ties back to perfection for me, because I felt that at the end of this film, the message was you're enough. That's what I felt the message is. The message is you are enough where you are. Now, that doesn't mean that characters can't grow and change, and we see that, and it's not that it encourages that, but you see Rocket come to terms with who he is, and how he's been made. And you see Peter come to terms and let go of this relationship with Gamora, right? Yeah, not Nebula, Gamora. Which has sort of defined him. Every character by the end of the film sort of is in a place where who they are is either found or enough. And that is profound.
Or heard. Yeah.
Or heard.
Even Groot, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Draxx and Groot. Draxx, no one listens to Draxx the entire time until he starts speaking. That's the whole point with the kids.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell us you could speak their language? You didn't ask.
Nobody asked. Yeah. Yep.
And the High Evolutionary's definition of perfection in this, and the definition that the Guardians land on, I think are they're fascinatingly different to me. Like this is a film that I think lands on we're imperfect and that's okay. Personally.
Yeah. Really. I think that also the part where, Adam Warlock was made to be perfect and was taken out of the cocoon too early. And yet he is not perfect. And he is, I don't want to say like not the smartest, but just not fully cooked yet, not fully baked yet, I guess you could say, as his mom would. But I found that extremely interesting because it's all of the other folks that have been through trauma and have gone through all of the things are more near perfection or near being enough than somebody who's literally made to be perfect. And just to me it's like it was the contrast is interesting.
Well, but it's interesting because the High Evolutionary abandoned that, like he built that race to be perfect, decided for whatever reason they weren't perfect enough, like he just keeps abandoning to keep retrying, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But I think what I would use maybe instead of perfect is everybody else is more whole, right? And so the trauma, it allows them to be more whole and more connected. where I think perfection, as unattainable as it is, also segregates, right? Like it separates, it pulls out, it fragments because we can't deal with the imperfect. Um, and so it actually, like, you're more connected and more whole in your imperfection because it's real. And you learn and you grow from trauma, right? It's a little bit, what's it called? Kitsuki, the Japanese art of, like, when something
Yeah.
breaks, they put it back together with gold as to highlight kind of where the reconnection points are, and they consider it more beautiful because it's additive now. Something's been added to it.
Which they use in Loki. I don't know if you knew that. They when they make it to the end game, if you will, no pun intended, where they're standing with Kang. That's what they've done on the walls of the building.
Yeah.
If you look, there all the cracks have been filled with gold, like exactly like what you're describing.
Yeah.
I like what you're saying there. The idea of wholeness as opposed to perfection is an interesting distinction because we see that they're still imperfect, but they're, even Rocket saying people need a second chance. Everybody deserves a second
Yeah.
chance. So there's still that imperfection, but
Mm.
rather than blowing it up, a pun intended there, it's like how can we rebuild, and there's a real sense of value. I mean, the community aspect is there. That's why I like this idea of it being about individual as well as what we've talked about being family, because I think that there's a real sense of wholeness is a better word. Wholeness that takes place at the end of the film.
Yeah, totally. I think, and that's for me, like, it's even about, like, I just find Rocket and his friends and that friendship is just, they were whole. They were all whole to me. Like, they really owned their own self. Like, so even the names they came up with, right? Like Lila, and then Floor, because Floor is always on the floor. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I love this. And the teeps and
Yeah.
this is all making each of them just, to me, whole. Like it ties it all nicely. And I love the part where Lila kind of brings Rocket back to life. And it really ties in with the other movies of, like,
Yeah.
it's not your time yet, friend, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
you'll be with us, but go back. And the fact that, he has been a raccoon this whole time. I just thought it was funny when he's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a raccoon, but then you see, so it's tying it all together. And I can't say enough about this movie. I think that I was at loss for words at some point when somebody like Rocket, who's traumatized, detests the world, outlaw, is then becoming smarter than the high evolutionary. And that the high evolutionary has to go to him to say, how did you know that? How did you do that? And so in trying to create perfection, you eventually, I don't know, it was just a weird, I don't know if you saw that or thought anything
That
of
the
it, but
creation
that to me was,
surpasses the creator.
yeah.
So my little theory on that, and it's totally a very naive rose-colored glasses kind of theory, is the reason that was true of Rocket and none of the other creations is because Rocket had friends and family, which is what the four of them became, and that was the fuel to build the stronger connections and to surpass, like, the design piece specifically, right? Like, I think it was that community that they had, and that he was loved. And that love nurtured his ability to kind of stretch beyond his design.
That's interesting because now, again, like, not locking into that or not, but certainly the high evolutionary, the issue for the high evolutionary is how is it that you, like, it's all about his ego. And you and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, his ego is embedded in his creation. I have to create perfection. Hold on. How is it that you've done something that I didn't intend for you to do? And but Rocket has simply grown in a slightly different way, and somehow to him, to the high evolutionary, this is a problem. This is a problem because somehow have you gotten better than me?
Yeah.
That's right.
And my ego can't take that.
And
Yeah.
ego can't take it. Exactly. Um, he's a terrifying villain in so many ways.
Yes. Especially, so for me, the scariest part, especially for comparing him to Kang, is that Kang was always a villain. He was never revered. He was never loved. The people who follow out of fear. But the High Evolutionary was loved, was revered, was like worshipped a little bit, which of course fed his ego and was super problematic. But you look at Rocket and the other creatures, they loved him.
They
like
did.
sincerely loved him. And to me, that's a scarier villain. Because of the falsehood there, you know?
Yeah. That's that. I like that observation. Absolutely. I will say, total side note, not to steer us away, the introduction of Rocket's friends is the most terrifying character introduction I've seen since Toy Story. It reminded me of Toy Story when they're in Sid's house and the characters start coming out. It's like downright horrifying.
But then the voices are so cute, and you're like, oh my god, they're nice and
friendly. Yeah. Especially Floor. Like Floor, I think, was the scariest looking, and you're like, oh, what's gonna? Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I like that you draw that out, that they loved the High Evolutionary until they don't, you know, until they
they didn't know. They didn't know that they weren't going to go to Counter Earth, and that they weren't made for, like, it's just sad.
Yeah, but even if, like, to me, I don't know, it's just more psychologically manipulative. Okay, let's keep the Toy Story example, right? So the toys all come out in like Sid's room. They all hate him. They're terrified of him. He's done these horrible things to them. Well, the High Evolutionary has done horrible things to these creatures, but they love him. They don't hate him. They don't see it as, you know what I mean? Like, they're not seeing it as, he hurt me, he changed me, he tortured me. All of those things are true, but that's not their experience of it. Like, to me, that, again, the scary villain part is that deep level of like psychological manipulation there.
Well, they're living their life based on a promise that they've been given.
Yeah.
And the reality of anything else is not even in their mind. It's not even in their mind, because this High Evolutionary has no plans for them.
Yeah.
And they, you know, just like, you know, they're like, oh, it's going to be so great, and I can't wait for that day. And he's like, well, I'm not doing that with you. You got, which is sort of amazing, because why do they keep, he torches everybody else. Why keep them around? Do they ever establish why they keep those other ones around?
I think the ones he torches
are
because they get extremely violent and can't be contained.
Not all the time. No.
Are you talking about Rocket's friends?
Yeah, I'm talking about why
like in the other creatures,
because he incinerates the other ones, and some of them even says they're as peaceful as you are. You know.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I think were they all part of the same batch, or was Rocket the 89? Okay.
No, Rocket's batch 89, I think, was just the 4 of them, or were there more? There might have been more. We don't actually know.
Well, they welcome Rocket in there, so I assume they're another batch.
No, I think they're all batch 89 together, because there's a batch 90, right? And there's I think, could be wrong, but I don't think like batch 89 is all the raccoons, for example, or all the, I feel like probably batch 89 is, we're going to try this mutation or this difference with this group. So all of them, like Rocket, Floor, Teefs, Lila, they all had biomechanics attached, right? So they all had some kind of metal something, non-organic kind of connection. The ones where Rocket figured out the problem, they were all fully biological and organic, right? They were just trying to evolve them super fast. So and that's just my guess, is like their experimentation was, now we're going to try and attach metal limbs and see what that does. And now we're going to try, okay, that's batch 89. Batch 90, now we're, I don't know, going to try crossbreeding this and this and see what happens. And
but That
which
movie's so good.
I never thought of it. And again, I saw it online. Somebody said that it totally explains why Rocket's so obsessed with getting artificial limbs throughout this franchise. And now there's
That's a
an
good
actual
point.
purpose.
Yeah,
There's an actual purpose for it, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and
such a good point.
Although I mean, the leg in the first film was 100% like a gag, right? Was the just wanted
Oh
to
yeah,
see
that
if
was
you would do
funny.
it. Yeah.
it's a gag in every film.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, the eye,
Even
like Thor's eye, and
Yeah.
he threatens to get Bucky's arm, and then he does at
yeah,
Christmas.
it's
Like,
Yeah.
so true.
gets it as
Yeah.
a gift in the Christmas special.
Yeah.
Like, but now because of this story, we gain some context.
Understand.
Talk
Yeah.
about trauma. There's this there's this need to have artificial limbs, and which we could get into what that means, I guess. But I mean, certainly in response to that, this is we sort of understand. We understand Rocket, of course, much more better, but we understand the Rocket that we've already known.
Yeah.
Is so much better, so much better. It's the high evolutionary, I think, is one of the more terrifying villains we've seen, and part of it is because the animal trauma. But Mira, I think you're absolutely right. The idea of him putting, what's the word? The idea of him not being honest. The idea of him changing the purpose for what he's, and again, it's all about his ego and him.
Yep.
It's terrifying. What a terrifying vision.
And you see it like in a super classically narcissistic way when he's interacting with Rocket and then he doesn't get what he wants. And then that instant, the rage and the switch and the right. But before that, he was very saccharine, very like Rocket sitting on his lap. They're like, right? It's
But even that was terrifying when he was sitting on his lap and he had his hand over his, like, I don't know. It was like, yeah, you're right. They fall in love with them as the creator, but he is terrifying. His face. And so going back to dealing with trauma for a minute, because Rocket obviously went off and did a number on the face, right? And basically kind of protected or out, kind of lashed out, and having to deal with the trauma of what happened to him. I'm wondering how did he never really got over that, and I don't even think he got over it in this movie either. But
except for he stopped before killing him, right?
Yeah. And it's so weird. Maybe it's that love thing you were talking about. It's like you still love them and can't shake it, but you're so mad. I just thought that was interesting that he didn't even die at the end of the movie.
Oh, see, that to me was a little bit about redemption, and to me, the Rocket not killing him is actually to Rocket's benefit, not the High Evolutionary benefit, right? It freed Rocket from the hold that the High Evolutionary had on him, and the like almost anvil around his neck of the death of his friends. Yeah. And his feeling of responsibility, again, blame again, right? So Peter Quill, blame at the beginning. If I hadn't been drunk, then this would have never, happened to Rocket. And then you've got the High Evolutionary who just decides anytime something goes wrong, he blames everybody else but never himself. And you've got Rocket blaming himself for the death of his friends. Totally. And I think, right? And it's this anvil that just weighs you down. But in him saying everybody deserves a second chance, to me, that was a whole lot less about the High Evolutionary getting a second chance and Rocket just releasing that anvil, letting go of that blame piece and letting go of the hold that the High Evolutionary had on him.
Yeah.
I love the way that you just put that, because it's like everything you're feeling, but I couldn't put into words. Like I felt that in that moment, right? But it didn't make sense because I was so angry that everything ass has done to these animals, and so I was like already furious. But yeah, no, I thought totally a fair assessment of that. It's like even forgiveness. Like I need to forgive you in order to move on, and I need to let it go.
Because the person it helps is me, not you.
Yeah.
Right? Forgiving is more in the forgiver than the person being forgiven.
And there's a cost to that.
Mm-hmm.
Cost to that. to the person doing the forgiving,
Mm.
release to say, I'm not going to hold this, is pretty powerfully executed in this film.
Yeah, I really like that too. I think it's. But how did you feel about Cracklin and Yondu coming back and saying, like trying to? I think that was him finding himself too. Did you see Yondu come back and say like, "Believe in yourself, son," or something like that? I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, like an apparition of him. Yeah,
I liked it. I'm not gonna lie. I really felt like Kraglin was there because he's there. Like they had to give him something to do. Like his primary storyline is calling Cosmo a bad dog, and it was fine.
Yeah,
just, like but the Yondu moment was lovely. It was very sweet.
Tender. Yep.
I didn't think it was a key arc. Like it wasn't like, but it was fine. I thought it didn't. I just thought, oh, that's fun. You know, they gave him something to do, and because he really had nothing to do the story. He's pretty important, I guess, at the end, but
yeah, he's always been a bit of a side character, though, right? Like the through the entire series of Guardians, so it fits. Like it fits. If he'd suddenly been a super main character, you'd been like, what happened there? Why the shift? Where's this coming from? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Like he didn't need to be central. But he was a little more prominent when Yondu was alive because they sort of like his guy.
Yep.
But other than that, like it was, I love Sean Gunn. It's I mean,
he's fun.
And Sean Gunn had a lot to do in this one anyway because he's Rocket, so he had a lot. Very busy.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a fun moment.
Wait, what do you mean he's Rocket? It's not Bradley Cooper anymore?
Oh no,
Bradley Cooper is the voice.
Yeah, the voice. He was actually the one that does the is it a toy that they hold up? I think he like does the actual
really?
body.
Yeah, he has always acted for Rocket.
What? I had no idea.
You didn't know?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. He gets 2 paychecks.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's literally like the dots and then or a puppet, like he's the animator of the puppet kind of thing.
They're animating Rocket's movements over his
right. Okay. Yes.
Movements.
Yeah. Wow. I had no idea. That is so cool. Yeah, they couldn't have given him more than poor guy. You're right. He had a lot of work.
He was busy. Yeah. It was a very Rocket-centered story. So although I'd pay for a picture to see Sean Gunn cuddled by the High Evolutionary.
Oh my God, I would love that.
Right, sitting on his lap. What?
Sitting on his lap, and
yeah.
I'm gonna have to go look that. That would be hilarious. That picture does exist. I had to throw this in there, but when Mantis kind of took off, did you get the sense that there might be like a little Mantis Disney Plus spin-off? Because here's why I'm throwing it in there, because in the comics, Vision and Mantis actually get together. So I don't know how that ties in.
Who and Mantis?
Vision and Mantis.
Vision and Mantis. Yeah, I don't know how that ties in, but
Vision doesn't exist anymore, right? In the
in the comic. I don't know in the
okay.
Well, he not that he doesn't exist. White Vision exists.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If they bring back Vision and put him with anybody other than Scarlet Witch, people are going to run.
There will be hell to pay.
Like it just doesn't make sense. Although I did hear, and Dina, I'm sure you can back me up on this. That the legendary Star-Lord reference is in reference to a short comic series that was about 10 years ago, where he gets together with Kitty Pryde.
Yes.
So that to me screams Disney Plus, and it screams like, okay, now this is a way to bring in the X-Men. Like that, if that's true.
Oh,
that's. I mean, it might not be that at all, but yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, I just have to throw that little nerdy geek stuff out of the way.
Love it.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Overall, loved it. Can't wait to see it again. Actually, well, minus the crying. But
yeah. Do you think though? Actually, I have a question about that. Do you think that it will get any less emotional watching it more than the one time?
I don't know, man. Those scenes,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't handle it. So I don't
I
know.
think so. I think so because I know what's coming. But I mean, there are some films that hit you every time. I
Yeah.
don't know if this would be it.
One of them. Yeah.
But it might be.
You might see something else, right? That you're like, oh man, I was
Yeah.
so emotional about this one. I forgot about this
And
one.
I
I
missed
should
this
have
part.
this
Yeah.
thing.
I
Here's
feel
the
like some
reality. You bring yourself into this film anytime you see it. So when you're whatever situation you're dealing with is different, you're gonna
yeah,
take something different from it. So
it's true. And where you're like and you bring yourself in that moment, right? So you're a different person in different moments and sometimes you yeah. I think about that a lot when I think about when we watched Marcel the Shell with Shoes on. Like I so did not we watched this movie, Dina, and it was so beautiful and very sweet. But it just hit me super hard, like very emotional,
Really?
reminded me of my grandmother. Spoiler alert, the grandma dies in the movie. And I felt I was so emotional about it. I couldn't talk. Like I was trying to say something and I couldn't talk. I was totally choked up. So you never know. Like, and I mean, I've only seen it the one time. Maybe I see it again and I'm just as choked up or less choked up or not at all. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it was such a good, it was well written. It was just everything I wanted, the hope I needed after, because Ant-Man gave me a little bit of hope, but I think you're right. Like Paul Rudd, it's good to see him in small doses. Do I want a whole movie? I don't know.
Well,
It
also,
was
he never
good.
ages. We can see him again in 50
He's
years. He'll look
perfect.
exactly the
He's
same.
perfect. Yes. But then with this one, I was like, oh, I want every Marvel movie to have this effect. It just
Yeah.
so the fact that it's kind of done. Well, the new Guardians have come on the scene, which we can also discuss if you want. I thought they're kind of an interesting bunch. But it'll be interesting to see Rocket kind of take the lead after all the time that he's like, Thor's like, oh, you seem like you're the captain of the ship. And it's like, oh, you're very perceptive. Like he's been wanting this, and he
Yeah.
finally gets it. And it's sort
Yeah.
of his story being told, and this is so I really like that as well near the end. So yeah, it was just. What'd you think of Gamora and sort of her being with the Ravagers and finding family there, as opposed to maybe giving the Guardians a chance?
Yeah.
I don't know. There was this whole conversation between her and Peter that I remember about, this is your family, or this is where you find family,
Yeah.
or if that, back way
Yeah.
back when, this is where you found family. And at the end, though, she went back to the
Yeah.
Ravagers. So thought that was kind of interesting.
She just felt so harsh to me. And I don't know if it's like I forget what she was like at the very beginning, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
She just felt so harsh. I was like, oh, all is lost. Like there's no softness here. It's like the completely emotionless, very hard Thanos's daughter, Gamora. And I was like, no, why? All gone? Nothing? Like,
Yeah, it's interesting that she found herself this way, and it was
yeah.
like even Nebula like trying to explain to her. So I don't know that I like this Gamora, to be honest. Um,
Mm.
I just didn't. I don't know. I mean, I got it, but even watching the first Guardians, she wasn't killing people this way,
She
was
wasn't
she?
harsh. I don't
I
think she
just,
was. I don't know.
I have to go
Maybe
back
we're
and watch it.
romanticizing.
I have to
Yeah.
go
yeah.
back and watch it because she is cold in the first one. She's quite cold, because she is bounty hunter. She's a bounty hunter.
But she
Mm.
That's how
wasn't
they
as bad as
introduce her.
Nebula. Maybe that's why I didn't think of her as bad, because Nebula was really bad in the first one.
Nebula's
Yeah.
worse.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe that's why I thought like it was overshadowed by Nebula, and I didn't really pay attention to Gamora being bad. I don't know. Like this one, she was worse to me.
Yeah. Way
I
worse.
just didn't really like her very much.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought
I
she was
agree.
great. I thought she was
Yeah.
great. And I thought she was great. I'll tell you why. Like I know some people, and I've just given up trying to figure out logic in these things. Like
Mm.
it doesn't have to make sense why she's there. Like whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
get it, fine. But I thought she was great because they let her take a different journey. They let her take a different
That's
path.
what I'm saying. She found herself in a different way. And I'm
Yes.
like, and I appreciated that. It was just the way she entered back in. Just didn't find. I'm like, this isn't. I didn't see her as that bad in the Guardians. I'm like, where did this come from? I don't know. She
But
got
that's what
worse.
she would be
She
like
got
going with the
worse.
Ravagers. Remember, the Ravagers are not
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
that's a Ravager lifestyle. So like,
You're right.
she ends up essentially a pirate.
Yep.
And
She's got to be tough. Yeah.
And that ending, the way that goes together. See, like they gave her a little bit of softness at the end with the look, but with the the glance at Peter,
Yeah.
but they didn't force it. They didn't have a moment where it was like, you softened my heart.
No, I loved that didn't happen. I loved it.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. Yep.
They let her be her new self. And that's why I liked it, because I felt like it was authentic. Like it felt like her character came back, and this is what she's like, and this is her experience when she got here, and she's still that way.
And it is what it is. Yeah.
She ended up with other jerks, and she stayed a jerk because they're jerks. And that's why I thought it worked, because they just let her be someone different.
No, her story worked. I just didn't like her as
well,
I didn't
that's
like
fair.
her. But the story in the movie worked for me, because I was like, if they would have forced it, and she was like, I'm in love with you now, Peter, after that I found your picture in the thing.
True Love's Kiss made me remember everything.
Even the photo, like she was going through his backpack, and I'm like, oh God, is this where this is headed? But it didn't go there, and I was happy because, I mean, it's a touching moment. Give the throwaway kind of touching moment to those who are invested in that relationship. But yeah, no, I just didn't like her.
Well,
right.
But the character, the story fits. I'm glad it went that way.
And without Gamora, the movie would have been a lot shorter and run a lot more smoothly, because she often ended up being the source of foiling the plans.
So true.
Unintentionally, right? Yeah.
She is sort of unnecessary, I'm not gonna lie, in the film, but she's also very necessary to the others' journeys. But like her arc isn't necessary unless she's serving the role of a foil, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, she saved Rocket, I guess. First of all, she brought the enemy right to Rocket, and then she saved Rocket because she was the only one on the ship. Okay, great. Like, she maybe grew a little heart, like the Grinch, a little two sizes bigger. But I mean, so maybe that's kind of her purpose. I didn't relate to her as much. I did find the sadness of when Rocket obviously was dead or almost dead, of Nebula and Peter, and how everybody reacted. But they were so devastated and then relieved when he's back to life. And that when Nebula found out, I was just like, oh, because she's also kind of emotionalist and doesn't show affection. But with Rocket, they were together, you remember, right? Like they were together when everybody got snapped, and they had this different journey for a few years.
And it felt very sincere.
Yeah.
Right? None of it was contrived, none of it was overacted, none of it was forced over the top story. Like, it just was so genuine.
Yeah.
Kudos to the actors for that, right?
Oh,
and James and all of it, but it just felt sincere and real and genuine.
Yeah. It was really touching. It was a really touching moment.
Yeah.
What a feel-good movie. I'm so happy with it. I'm just so happy with it.
It was really well done.
It was just very well done. And I love that fight scene. Oh,
which one?
That fight scene that was like that. It was like almost the last one, right? When they were fighting and it was all in the one hallway, the one shot. You could see each of them fight. Oh, so good.
I'd like to talk about Nathan Fillion's role in the film. I thought that was hilarious. Those weird flesh-looking floating suits,
oh my God, yes. Can we talk about those? Those were hilarious.
It was so funny.
They were hilarious. And they looked like little udders almost.
Yes,
yes.
His level of arrogance and bravado just reminded me so much of Captain Hammer from Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. It was just...
That's a deep cut reference.
But he just strikes that tone so well that it's ridiculous and you buy it from him. You know what I mean? You're like, wow, that can't be a real person. No, okay, I see it.
I love that he's like, well, yeah, I know the feeling. I have, he annoys me too, or whatever. And he's like,
Yeah, I got one of those on my team. Yeah,
like, this is
one of those on my team.
So I really like that. I thought that was hilarious.
I thought
the suits were so funny.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really. I almost forgot about that, but I did laugh at that part. It was really good. Oh my god, the part where like Mantis makes the guy fall in love with Draxx. Yes! I was dying, and she does it every time. She does it every time.
What sells that joke for me is her laugh.
Yes.
It's not. It's like the scene is fine, and it's like, oh, ha 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 ha. But it's like her response to her own joke. It was. It
was just so pleasant.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, and I like their relationship. You can tell their relationship has come a long way when she's defending Draxx.
Yeah,
and that's a really special type of relationship right there. I think between Draxx and Mantis. Draxx also came full circle. I really liked his where they took him with this.
Yeah.
So
love bringing him back to being a father, right? Because the fuel for his vengeance in the beginning was the murder of his wife and daughter.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Well, this is entirely unnecessary, but we should start to wrap it up. We should screen it or skip it.
Do you have any question about what
Guardians, screen it or skip it?
Screen it.
Kind of sucks.
Screen it, buy it, wait for it on Disney Plus, everything, all the things.
Yep. 2 very enthusiastic thumbs up. Screen it all the way.
Yeah, I really, really liked it. I liked it even more than the Christmas special. I really liked it.
I think it's quickly becoming one of my. I'm not going to say it's like top 5 Marvel. It's weird to say top 10 Marvel is like top tier, but if there's like we're like 800 movies on this.
I was going to say, aren't there like 40 movies? I mean, top 10 and 40 movies is still the top 25%.
Pretty good. I thought it was excellent. It might be my favorite of the Guardians films. I'm gonna lie. I'm not okay. I gotta say this. I don't fully understand why the first one people say is the best Marvel movie. I don't love it. It's funny.
That's what they say. Who's saying this?
I hear that a lot.
I don't know about the best Marvel movie, but I liked it very much. Like it's funny, it's light. It was different than all the other Marvel films.
I think that's why it gets points.
Yeah,
because it's
one of my favorite series of them. Like it's really good, and the cast is good, and but this one is definitely the best of the 3 for me.
Yeah, I don't understand. When you look at the critics' reviews, the first one is much, much higher. I'd say in terms of its ratings, it's much, much, much higher than the other films. And
I think that's a novelty factor, though, right? It's like why sequels are never quite, because the tropes have already been done, the characters have already been placed. Like when it's something brand spanking new and out of nowhere, that novelty factor like just kicks everything up a couple of notches.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's an absolute, like, to me. Sometimes I gotta throw an asterisk in there. It is not a lighthearted romp. Like to say that this is a screen it for me, it absolutely is. But this is a dark and heavy film. Like it truly is. And it's a hard watch.
Which I think is a good disclaimer for folks who are interested in like taking their kids, because you take your kids to all the Marvel movies. There is some intensity, some really big conversations that will come out of watching this.
But some parents did complain. I heard that some parents did complain that it wasn't, that they didn't expect it or something like that. Again,
which I understand. I get that. A lot of people just see the Marvel logo and they're like, "Oh, it's fine." It's Marvel. And that doesn't mean.
We talked about Doctor Strange and how children left the theater like, "Here, take my Scarlet Witch one. I don't want her anymore. I'm terrified of her." Like this is, and it wasn't rated R. So
this franchise has grown up. Like it was always a little mature at the beginning. I mean, with character like Iron Man.
Yes. Yeah.
Iron Man is quite a mature story. That first one is quite mature. but the rest of the, like Thor is goofy, Cap is like an Indiana Jones film, but the franchise has grown up, and now they're dealing with topics of trauma,
Mm.
abuse, like
Yes.
heavy hitters.
Mm.
It's grown with their audience. So, I mean, that to me would be an asterisk on it, but as a Marvel fan and as a person who is invested in good superhero films, I want a good one. It's
Mm.
fantastic. I think it's a fantastic film. I don't understand the hatred for it because for a Marvel film, it's top tier.
I totally agree. Yeah. So, and then the soundtrack, oh, that opening song with Creep. And it was like, it's such a good song. And you're just like, oh, this is exactly how I wanted this to open.
And that's not that's a remix of the song, right? That's not the
Yes.
original. It's like creepier than the original. It just fits so well. A creepier version of Creep for the
I
BA.
want that soundtrack. Yeah, I definitely love.
Yeah.
When they played Space Hog, I was thrilled. Of course, it also bothered me because now they're playing classic music that I grew up with, and I'm like, oh crap, that just means
Yeah.
But
Oh my
Space
God,
Hog,
the
I was
song.
like, I've had people come to me, they're like, what's that song that they played outside the ship? And I'm like, oh, that's In the Meantime, and that is classic.
I love that. And I love that song when they go to Counter Earth with that family.
Which
When
one
they
was
go into
that?
the house, I need to find the song. Like it's
I
like
don't
a
know what
different
track it is.
language song. I'll have to find it and send it over to you. But I love the soundtrack. I love that kids who are younger, who don't know some of the songs, get to now love these songs. I mean, I remember Rubber Band Man is like a thing that now kids, forget millennials, like Gen Xers and Gen Zs and whatever, like they know this music, they're downloading it, like they're listening to it. Great. Let it all happen, because there has to be a timeless appreciation for some of these songs that just never get old.
Yeah.
No matter how old you are.
I will say the thing that I thought was hilarious was when they all go to the spaceship in their spacesuits, and I'm like, this is such a generational thing. The young kids were like, look, they're doing it Among Us.
What?
It's like this is 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the young, I don't even know what that is. It's like, no, that hurts my soul. But anyway, thank you both. Thank you. Always thank you. I love our conversations. I always adore them. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. These are always lots of fun.
We've had some scheduling issues. I'm not going to lie. This is episode 197. And part of me is a little sad of that because we've had some scheduling issues. I hadn't hoped this would be episode 201 because the first episode we ever did was Age of Ultron. And I thought the next one, once we get over that, should be a Marvel film. But I know so I think we are back next week, but episode 197, and we are coming up fast to 200, which is exciting for me.
Amazing.
That's amazing. Wow.
It's been quite a ride. But anyway, a reminder for you at home, you can find us wherever podcasts are available on your favorite podcast server. You can also find us on YouTube. You can like and subscribe to us on that as well. If you go to the podcast page at screenfish.net, you can download Fishing for More, some small group questions to help you get the conversation started with your friends of the Guardians as well. So thank you both again. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.